Ronnie, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Jeff. How are you?
Not too bad. Welcome to the Medium Podcast. How's the week been treating you, sorry.
Yeah, it's been a good week. Doing a bit of work around a tender, so that's
Nice.
interesting. So yeah, it's always a busy time when you do that.
I know when we had a conversation before, I think, it's about 10 years since we first met each other. You were at NAB, I was at Thomson Reuters back in the day. Now it's called something different. I know I joke around a lot, but you're still the same handsome chap.
Mate, I guarantee you there's a lot more grey hairs there. I think I would say 70% more grey.
We shall not judge. So tell me, I think last time we talked about career, you had a bit of a break, you made a few changes. Why is the career aspect so important to you?
It's a good question. I think most people associate with who they are with what they do. I try not to do that, but it's very difficult, right? I think having that kind of there's always a certain element associated with what you do as a person as to who you feel you are. And I think I came to a realization that that's not necessarily true, which is one of the reasons why I kind of started looking around. And also I started meeting people towards the end of my sort of foreign exchange career. I started meeting a lot of people within the startup space, tech space. And I was just fascinated by it. They had some amazing stories, just like you do within financial markets, but they had some amazing stories. And I thought that was just something that I wanted to be involved with.
Was a driver, I know we had a brief chat about it, was a driver more about creating a stronger identity for yourself? Or was it more about just mixing it up in a way?
Really, for me, it was about mixing it up. Jeff, I really felt like I had done financial markets and I'd done it well for a long period of time. Whether there may be people out there who I work with who say that, that he didn't do so well or whatever. But I felt what I had achieved was pretty good. And so for me, that meant that I was wanting a different challenge in life. I kind of felt like I've been doing the same thing day in, day out for 20 years in very many different roles, but certainly very, very, very similar roles and similar subject matter, which I really love that subject matter, which is foreign exchange. But at the same time, I think you also get to a point where you need a change in life and just to stay fresh, you've got to change it up.
And obviously right now at Pexa, it's really giving you, I know I talk about it a lot, I can just feel that energy coming from you when you talk about this new role. You have an opportunity to really build a new business. It's very agile. You're starting from the ground up. It's not really sales per se because you're dealing with customers, you're dealing with product. To me, it sounds like a fantastic opportunity that you got ahead of yourself.
Yeah, absolutely, Jeff. It's one of those things where I was looking around for a while. I'm a big fan of real estate. I love real estate. I'm an investor in real estate. I think most Australians want to be in real estate or are in real estate.
It always goes up.
Well, I don't know about that. We'll see. This will be the first time interest rates are starting to move up in 10 years. So it'll be interesting to see, people who bought houses the last 10 years will start to feel the pinch as interest rates go up. But, it has a tendency to move up. And I think a couple of reasons we're quite lucky here in Australia. The building industry can't build enough housing or dwellings. And number two, we've got good immigration policies which allow, people from overseas to come into Australia. That drives demand for housing as well. So for me, that's a real plus, and I think it's a good upside. Very similar to our share market, right? With superannuation, everybody's putting that 9.5% or 10% away.
It's huge,
and it's just traditionally gone into the share market. So if you're buying the index, it's bound to go up because money just keeps going in there.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, so you're right. So for me, that's one driver. Love real estate. Pexa is effectively the stock exchange for real estate. They're looking to broaden the competitiveness within the industry. But right now, Pexa is the main player within e-commerce, e-conveyancing and settlements.
Fantastic. And if you don't mind, tell us a bit more about the role. I do love the aspect how you're sort of building it as well. It's not. It doesn't sound like a typical. Here's a sales role. Hit that target. Away you go.
No, so when I first spoke to my manager about the role, he'd been in the business for probably just over 6 months, maybe 9, and he was tasked with building out the sales team. But the reality is that there's no product that's been finalised yet in the sort of the part of business that I'm in, which is effectively a startup within a listed entity. And they realised they've got this huge data set available to them, which they can use to actually go and do good in the community by giving insights to people, businesses, to create better customer experiences, better experiences for consumers overall. And so part of that journey for the last 2.5 years for them has been to develop and come up with ideas that they can take to market as a product and then obviously make a difference. So when I was speaking to my manager, he was saying, well, look, this role is not just a sales role, it's a discovery role, it's a relationship role, it's you're building out the network, you get to understand what the clients need or potential clients need and how they want to act and what they need in order to make their businesses better and their customer experiences better. So that's what we're really focused on, which is quite exciting, right? It's not often you get to be part of a company that's looking to do something good socially and expand it to the point where they're trying to help other companies do good socially.
It's a great mixing role, isn't it?
Very much so.
And obviously, throughout your conversations with these customers, has there been a use case that's really been quite interesting for you and quite profound? Obviously, if you're willing to share, I understand that these things are quite early. Has there been a customer that's really gone to you, hey, you know what, that's actually it's a pretty good problem to have, so to speak, and here's a potential solution I can offer you?
Yeah, I guess in a sense, one thing that really surprised me was one company that I met with, and I won't go into details because you don't want to sort of share that, but it was interesting to see that there were a global entity that didn't really have a policy around what we were trying to sell them, and that was a certain customer experience.
Okay, wow.
And they had a loose idea that they wanted to do something in this area, but they weren't really doing anything. So even though our product, they loved it and they were very keen to get involved with it, Jeff, they just weren't ready to buy, because even if we gave it to them, like what they said is, we don't have the bandwidth, the manpower, or the sort of framework for us to deliver or use this in any way. Which is a good thing, right? Because it shows the company's kind of, Pexa is thinking ahead of its time in terms of being a thought leader, but also looking for insights that can help clients themselves do better for their clients.
And just confirming, Pexa is like what you said, the stock exchange equivalent for property. But to be more specific, it's pretty much settlement data. Is that correct? Contract and settlement data?
Yeah, so contract and settlement data. So we work with the likes of the Land Titles Office. So, there's always 4 parties to a transaction. So there's the buyer, the seller. They're represented by their respective lawyers. And then they also have their financial institutions that they use. The lawyers or the conveyancers all plug into the Pexa platform, as do the financial institutions. And on settlement, when all the documents and everything is loaded and it's been ticked off and verified, what happens is that the Pexa exchange pushes a button, and then the two just auto settle. And so the buyer gets their name onto the land titles straight away on the title deed for the property, and their account is directly debited, and those funds are forwarded to the seller or the vendor straight away. So there's a huge reduction time in settlement. There's no longer a 6-week period waiting on checks to clear. There's also no longer I think it was something like 6 weeks it used to take before the incoming bank was registered on the mortgage, as well as the new owner.
Interesting, buddy. Interesting. Wow.
Yeah. So, that's obviously that's a limited potential fraud gaps. That, in the past, there's been instances where somebody sold a property and then very quickly turned around and sold it again because they were still the registered person on the land titles. And so it could leave banks and buyers exposed for a little while. Now, that wasn't something that happened often, Jeff, but it has happened, right?
Yeah, if there's any sort of latency issue in terms of a gap, someone's going to exploit it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, most people don't, but there is always that. It always happens every now and then that somebody works out that they can do that. And the other thing also is it means that the correct data is going on the title deeds now. Previously, there could have been spelling mistakes and other mistakes that happens, right? So,
good old human error.
That's right. So that's kind of been eliminated. But for me also, when you think about it, and I hadn't thought about this until just recently when I'm inside of Pexa, if you think about the amount of paper and reduced travel there is as a result of doing e-conveyancing, so everything's electronically done. The lawyer, the banker still travels to their office, but when I first started in financial markets, this is a good 22 years ago, my first role was to work as part of CBA business banking, was to take the checks down to go to settlement. And then you're standing down there and you're yelling out, you're Smith settlement, and you find the right lawyer and you connect and you go through and you go, right, I've got these checks here and this is the list, it looks right, and you swap. But sometimes you didn't have the right check, or the amount was off, or even if it was off by $1, right, you kind of delay settlement. So then there's a delay in settlement. And to me, that means, you've saved incredible amounts of people traveling, paper. So overall, it's also a very greenhouse gas-friendly business.
Yeah, because if everything's happening electronically, it's real time, it minimizes human error, it's instantaneous, it reduces fraud. There are huge benefits as opposed to sort of a paper trail, so to speak. So just getting back to that organization, Ronnie, that was actually quite interesting. So they were interested, but they didn't have the policy framework to initiate a potential solution. Could you also argue that maybe it wasn't a priority for them, maybe, or was it that forward thinking, so to speak, in terms of the potential idea?
Well, the idea was initially it was mandated by government, right? So COAG, and they basically came out. Now I can't remember what that acronym stands for. As you know, corporate loves acronyms, but COAG essentially is the joint sort of government saying, for the state government saying, hey, we need a solution to this. We can't keep doing paper-based conveyancing, and we want to make it electronic because it makes sense. Now, Australia is the first country in the world to have electronic settlement for property.
Wow, really?
Yeah. So
okay, didn't know that.
Yeah, absolutely. We're currently trying to set up in England. So there's some countries in the world that are really suited to this, generally within the sort of British Empire, so to speak. So like if you think where the British have been, that's probably good, suitable countries for the likes of
because they can sort of make that migration from paper-based to electronic, but obviously keep the same process.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So that's kind of things that are happening. So that's quite exciting. But it also means that as you start to spread out through the world and you can reduce this reliance on paper, you're helping forests, you're saving trees, and you're saving greenhouse gas emissions. So Pexa is sort of looking to be carbon net neutral by 2025.
It makes perfect sense. Wow, I agree. Didn't really. I know we had a chat before about it, but now I get it even more.
Yeah. So it's pretty cool.
And if you've got providers like RP Data and sort of, I think CoreLogic, I'm not too sure, the same organization, would they provide somewhat similar information in terms of that type of data? And would they be a competitor of sorts, or is this very much focusing on sort of solicitors slash conveyancers who would leverage the system? Or I'm sort of curious to see where would you potentially pitch the end solution?
Yeah, so the end solution is geared towards conveyancers and lawyers and banking institutions, right?
Mm.
The likes of, I guess, Domain and CoreLogic they're parallel competitors in a sense that they don't compete with what we do because they don't do e-conveyancing. But obviously they have a lot of property data. So they're sort of further along and earlier in the supply chain.
Interesting.
Pexa comes in at the point where there's the exchange of contracts and then the exchange of funds to facilitate the purchase and transfer of property, which is pretty cool. The real estate agents do a lot of work beforehand, and they would be in constant contact with the likes of CoreLogic, Domain, and then post settlement when the known post sale or auction. That's when Domain and CoreLogic still talk to the real estate agents. Post settlement, I guess, Domain and CoreLogic may do some work, but I think it's most of their work happens pre, and maybe also around valuations, right? They may look at valuation data and things like that. You can look up your property and go, hey, it's now worth X amount of dollars. Hopefully that number always gets bigger and not smaller. But
like what you said, potential rates coming soon. We don't really know that, but I see what you mean when it's quite complementary. Yeah. And in a way, it's actually a very unique data set, which is somewhat of a monopoly. I don't say it in a negative way. I say it in a way where Pexa is essentially capturing all that data, and it's very powerful.
Yeah, I mean, look, you can get that data from the Land Titles Office, so it's available there. And I mean, it's a monopoly in the sense that you call the stock exchange a monopoly, right? I don't know if you would say that they're necessarily.
Sure. Good point.
They're a monopoly, but sometimes you need a sole provider to make sure that it's efficient and streamlined. The whole idea behind Pexa was created was as I said, by a sort of the state governments wanting to improve on the e-conveyancing and make it better. So the stock exchange was created to make sure that settlements of shares were happening in real time and were done at arm's length and in a regulated manner. So I guess that's what Pexa is doing, right?
Interesting. Don't mind me. As I understand even more, it's actually quite a very interesting offering. And just getting back to the role, meeting a lot of people, it's a bit of sales, a bit of relationship building. It's a huge difference from financial markets. Yeah, there is elements to it which are quite similar in terms of financing, so to speak. But I can see the role being something that's very fruitful going forward.
Yeah, for me, Jeff, the exciting part is being part of, being in a startup which has got, basically a really strong runway. It's got good financial backing, and you've got the potential to make a difference in the world. I think most startups kind of fall within that category. The advantage we have is that we've got a strong runway. Like, we've got strong support by a parent company that we're part of.
It's sort of de-risked in a way.
Yeah, a little bit, because you don't need to worry about whether we're going to get paid this month or whether we get the product to 90% and then we run out of funding, right? Like
you've got that strong backing.
It's very, we're very lucky, right? But at the same time, the company's also realised that once it's got, let's say, gets to 100% of full conveyancing, then it can't grow anymore. It's reliant on growth from more properties being sold. Well, so you got to expand the product offering, and the only way you can do that is leveraging what you have in your sort of war chest, and what's in your war chest is data.
It is, eh? I know we talked about if we split up the role in terms of you being in a startup. I'm very curious to dig a bit deeper on the whole sort of social aspect. I know being in foreign exchange, financial markets for the past 20 years, there's always a bit of a repeat on, which I think is very fascinating, about just doing something for the good.
Mm.
Has that also been a key driver for you to make a switch?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, I've always been interested in having my own business, Jeff. That's and I've always got some kind of side hustle going on the side, or trying to start a side hustle of some sort. Because I think it's important to keep your mind ticking over, but also you never know, you might come up with a great idea that just works, right? But for me, to be able to actually do some good by being in an organisation like that, that's not to say that I wasn't doing good before in financial markets. You absolutely are. I think for me, the difference is, financial markets, it's uber competitive. It's always about making that next sale, making sure that the clients are well looked after, serviced, that you're helping them achieve best possible outcomes whilst also making money. Don't get me wrong, Pexa makes money, but it's also about, it feels like it's very socially conscious. It's a very mature culture, even though it's a young company. And it's very focused on making sure that it's inclusive, it's open to ideas and innovation, where sometimes I felt like, I don't know about you with your background in financial markets, but sometimes I felt like financial markets, they wanted innovation, but not too quickly and not too fast. That's something that I found, yeah.
Is that a nature of the larger organization you were with?
No, because I mean, I've been at, I've been at large, two of the major banks. I've been at large international organisations, and then I've been at a smaller boutique kind of organisation. And even there, it was profit driven, right? And again, it's not a bad thing, because you're helping the client, you're making a difference in their lives.
You're trying to go for win-win at the end of the day, hopefully.
Yeah. Hopefully. I think most people do look for the win-win. But here, what I'm doing is I'm trying to understand problems within the industry, how we can solve them with what data we have, and how that then can make a positive impact not only on the immediate customer, but their end customer down the road, so the consumer. And for me, that's pretty cool, right? If you
it's very direct. It seems to me that whatever you do, you can directly attribute that to an end result, which is for the better.
Yeah. I feel that's the difference between financial markets and being at Pexa. But I also get the sense, Jeff, I also get the sense that speaking to other tech companies and tech owners, that is a similar kind of feeling. Like you are actually you feel like you're making a difference. Maybe it's because it's a newer industry and there's still so much innovation that's happening compared to financial markets and other areas like that are traditionally well developed, well known, well understood, to the point that things kind of have a rhythm and a process that gets followed.
You make a very good point there. I'm curious to get your thoughts here, because we could branch off to an entirely different topic here, right? Why do you think people want to do something that contributes to the good? I'm noticing that a bit more and more. I'm not too sure if you're sensing the same thing from your network. I don't know whether it's the nature of the fact that we're a bit developed in the years, so to speak. We've been around from some time before, and maybe now we know what we want. Is it a nature of the environment where people are realizing maybe I can align doing something good whilst also looking after my family? What do you think about that?
Yeah, look, I think you hit the nail on the head when you first sort of mentioned it. I do think getting older, you start to think about different ways. I often speak to my dad about different things, and one of the things we often talk about is how you start out life. I feel, I don't know if this is true or if it's validated. I haven't done any surveys, but I feel like you start out life being a socialist, and then people get this idea that actually, no, hang on, I need to make some money to become a capitalist. And then as you get older, you start to go back to socialism because you kind of feel like you've done well, and for whatever your measure of doing well is, you've done well. And so you start to go back to socialism, and whether that's giving back or having a look at something that's fair and equitable for everybody. I think that's a strong thing that comes out. Whether that's that's probably a generalization, Jeff. I don't know if it's true for everyone, but that's certainly how I feel sometimes.
I reckon that's pretty much bang on the money. By all means, there are people out there where they do see the dollar sign as their God. That's okay, each to their own. Getting back to your point about startups believing that they can create something for the better, I suppose in a way, that's why I'm doing this in a way.
Yeah,
just an opportunity that I believe can make the world better.
Yeah, I like that. You're sharing.
Yeah, and I think with the nature of roles nowadays, I think the variability excites me too. And getting back to your point about, you grow up, become a socialist, but then you realize is that if you really want to make change, it needs to be backed up by a big purse. But then you might flip back into being that sort of, how can I give back? Perhaps that's very much the nature of how things are nowadays. I'm not too sure.
Maybe I don't know that. I wouldn't know whether that's true or not. But the more, and maybe it's just because of the life stage we're in, Jeff.
Maybe, yeah, I'm not too sure.
Yeah, look, and I'm sure there's people in our age who, really still trying to make it. I'm not saying that I've made it by any means, believe me, but I definitely think there's people who are worse off, and there's many people who are better off than I am. But I think I'm comfortable with where I am. But maybe that's the other thing. Maybe it's because you become comfortable.
Interesting.
So,
when you say made it, right? What would you consider? How would you define made it? If I go to you, Ronnie, in X number of years' time, and you told me that you've made it, right? What does that actually mean?
For me, that means complete control of your own time.
Complete control of your own time.
Yeah, I think that's the easiest way to say it. And by that I say, well, you don't have to worry about where you're making your money from. You can cover all costs, and you can go do what you want to do when you want to do it.
Interesting. You know what my one is?
No, what is it?
Peace of mind.
Yeah, wow. I like that.
One of the biggest things for me was that have you heard of the term hedonic treadmill before?
Dynamic treadmill?
Hedonic treadmill.
No.
You're sort of on, so you parked a rat race, but just imagine you're on a treadmill at the gym. It just keeps going, right?
Yeah.
So for me, I found that when I achieve something, I'll then go for another one. When I hit that, I go for another one. So when I took some time off last year, I actually said to myself, you know what, I've had enough. I just want to get off the treadmill for the time being. And it got me a bit more thinking about, what's most important to me. And when you filled in the questionnaire about sort of career, I was very fascinated to see your views on that. And by all means, there's no right or wrong in terms of what made it is, but it's just very interesting perspective to see how you approach things. So you're at Pexa now. Would there be an end goal to your career, if there is an end goal?
Well, I think that's where my own business comes into it, right? And I think at some stage, I'd love to, like I said, I'd love to have that, and it could be anything. It could be anything from, I've looked at plumbing businesses, equipment businesses.
Your fancy sauna business, I know that.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's so much the topic, but what I do look for is, can it have an impact, and a positive one? So I guess the end goal for me with Pexa is I'm right now I'm learning and developing and growing, and I think that's really important.
Huge.
Yeah, and I think as soon as you stop to feel like, that's probably one of the other reasons why I kind of wanted to get out of sort of foreign exchange. I mean, I could certainly have made a sideways move into lending or other things within financial markets, because it's not something that I'm very experienced at. But I think ultimately I felt like I had a very, very good grasp of foreign exchange. I understood, what you could do in terms of protection and taking advantage of it. So for me, it was like, well, what can I go learn? Where can I do something else? And I think technology is a space that's always evolving, right? And when I mean technology, I don't just mean your sort of your phone or things like that. I mean, as an overall, technology, when we first started using fire to the wheel to things like that, will keep evolving. Yeah, it's amazing that we've got electrical cars now, but what's next? What's after that? Is it going to be little flying drones and we're quite lucky, right? Because I mean, you look at my grandparents, the technology evolutions they saw was probably from horse cart to car, telephones and televisions, right? That was kind of probably the extent of what they saw was developed. Whereas we've seen, like we're on a video call. If you tell someone 50 years ago that they're going to have a little screen where they're going to be able to talk to someone and see them the other side of the world, well, they might not have believed you, right? In real time.
That's true. That's very true.
So what's next? Like, what are they going to do? Are we going to be traveling like Star Trek? Beam me up, Scotty kind of thing. I don't know.
Do you have a piece of technology that you're looking to see come to fruition?
No, I don't. I think I have no doubt that electronic cars are going to be all over the roads quicker than most people think. It'll happen very quickly. I think it'll be in the next 5 to 10 years. It's going to be everywhere.
I might miss the noise from a V8 or a V10,
but me too. Even the motorbikes, right? But yeah, no, I don't. What about you, Jeff? Do you have any technology that you kind of?
Instant travel.
Yeah, that's pretty cool, right?
Instant travel, because we get picked on so many times because we live in Australia. We're so far away from everywhere. If we want to get anywhere, it's at least 6-7 hours. I'm not too sure if you watched the cartoon Dragon Ball or even Star Trek, right? About sort of just literally what instant transmission is, how to describe the ability to go from one place to the next. I think that'll be fascinating. If there's anything I want to see, instant transmission. If I'm talking to you right now, tomorrow I can go to, I'm going to go to Rome. I'll call you then.
Yeah. Actually, I think that'd be pretty cool. Isn't that one of the things they're looking at with the space travel? Like you kind of go up and then come straight down, but it's obviously still takes time, but it's a lot quicker to get anywhere on the planet doing that.
Wow, I haven't heard about that. You mean flying vertical, then going somewhere else? Or?
The Earth will rotate and then you'll come back down, and it's quicker than actual flying.
To be honest with you, I don't think it's going to be in our lifetime.
Probably not, but
probably not. So it's very fascinating so it's very much for you, Ronnie, learning, enjoying that next sort of technological change. If you're in the property game, there's a lot of variability in the role. Learning keeps coming up to my mind, where you mentioned, obviously, when you did foreign exchange for some time, it's sort of a bell curve. You hit the optimum point, correct me if I'm wrong, and perhaps there wasn't anything else to learn, and you go, you know what, I need to make that change.
Look, don't get me wrong. I'm sure there's still plenty more to learn, but I think to your point, maybe it's not a bell curve. Maybe it's more that S curve, right? You kind of get to the point.
Interesting. Okay.
Where you have 80% adoption, and you could go real deep for many years and get that last 20% and become an absolute leading world expert on it. Or you could kind of move on and do something else, right? Like I believe you can get to 80% in any field, or even 90% pretty quickly. But I think then you have that law of diminishing returns. The more you do, the less that you're going to get out of it. And I think that's probably where it was.
Good point. Because if you're starting off, you're learning 5%, 10%, 5%, 10%. But when you get to 80, 90, when you're sort of approaching mastery, it's then all about the 0.1% gains.
Yeah.
Interesting take. Interesting take. So with Pexa, in terms of the current role, could you then see yourself maybe as a obviously you're learning right now. We don't want to jump ahead. Would you want to lead a team going forward? Could you see yourself maybe being responsible for the business union? I suppose what I'm trying to say is that, you know, you're still in the job, you're still loving it, you're still enjoying it, but you're sort of marrying it with the ability to build something and be on a business.
Yeah, look, absolutely. You know, and to get to the point where you're leading something, you obviously that's kind of like having your own business as well, in a sense.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Absolutely. So yeah, I could definitely see that. For me, I would think that the ultimate outcome would, that'd be, you know, amazing to lead a team or a division within, or even the whole company itself. Not sure how likely that is. You know, as you know, Jeff, when you sort of get to our age and you start to look back, there's plenty of people who've got you know, moving ahead of you very, very quickly. That they're just super skilled. There's so many skilled people out there that are amazing to work with. So it's not, you know, I don't have this deep down, I must be a CEO or something like that. That's not it. But, you know, if the opportunity is there, absolutely, I'd love to try that, and I would give it a red hot go. I'm sure it. But ultimately, I think the overall goal for me is to, as long as I'm learning, as long as I'm growing, then it's the right role for me. It's when you start to stagnate, that's when I feel you get comfortable, and then you stagnate, and then when you're comfortable, you don't grow, right? And so everybody else outgrows you, and then you start to fall behind. And I'm not talking.
Is that a bad thing, though?
Well, I think falling behind is not necessarily a bad thing if that's what you want. I mean, if you're happy just to stand still, but the thing is, you don't stand still, right? You're falling behind. And I don't mean in a monetary sense. It doesn't have to be. It's not all about dollars and cents. You could very well stand still or keep up and not have any more money. But it's more about growth, right? Personal human growth, and I think that's one of the reasons we're here on Earth is you've got to grow as an individual, and you've got to grow to the point that you can.
Man, we're bordering along meaning of life stuff, man. This could get hairy. This could get pretty hairy.
Absolutely.
Wow. Okay.
So yeah, I think that's for me is where I'm at.
I like it. It's very simple. Hearing it from you.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think so.
I think it's pretty simple.
I think it's pretty simple. I don't think it's complicated.
No, not at all. Being in a role, being in a position where you're learning, you're not stagnant, you're growing. Pretty simple in my eyes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just getting back to your definition of, you know, when you made it, to me, it seems like you just do it now. You're in a role that you enjoy.
Yeah.
You know, it's a startup. There's a lot of autonomy, correct from wrong. You pretty much can manage your time. A lot of us are working from home. I think you really have made it.
Thanks, Jeff. Look, you're probably right to an extent. Whether it's, I'm still beholden to be somewhere, right? Like I still have to clock in. I still have to do the work. I think my definition.
But what is you going to do? But that's the problem.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, and I think as long as I'm enjoying it, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think as long as you're enjoying it, it sounds pretty cool to me. But obviously, I'm not in a situation. You know, life is very much a very nuanced sort of thing. Just a different perspective that I'm sort of feeling from you.
Yeah, no, you're right. I do. I think the other thing is that probably the one thing that I'm not doing is I'm not giving back to the point that I'd like to be giving back, if that makes sense.
Please elaborate.
I think, look, and that's one of the reasons why I took this role, is because as a holistic business, it's giving back to the community. Where I didn't feel like I was doing that all the time when I was in the financial institutions, and I feel like we're going over stuff that I've already covered, but I think that's sort of part of the reason for that move and for seeing myself elsewhere.
I like it. And if you don't mind me asking, does your partner feel very similar in terms of having that similar career path where you guys want to give back, or?
Yeah, it's something we both talk about frequently, and we both see ultimately, you know, there's many things we'd love to get involved with, but I do think, one thing that I kind of look at and think about is the NDIS space.
Okay,
so
interesting. Wow.
So I think that, you know, for disabled housing, I think is important. So I'll give you the reason for that is probably twofold. Number one, I think everybody deserves somewhere nice to live and somewhere that's appropriate for their situation.
I agree.
But also, Jeff, as you know, I came here. I'm a migrant myself, so I came here when I was 12 from Denmark, and my mum used to do nursing work. And sort of when I was probably about 17, 18, once I got my license, I'd sometimes drive and drop her off from some dinner or stuff when she was doing night shift. And every now and then I'd go around with her, she'd check in on the folks. And every now and then there'd be like a 18, 20-year-old quadriplegic or other sort of disabled person who's in this nursing home with 85-year-olds, 90-year-olds, 70-year-olds who, you know, at their end of their life. And these people, although they have disabled and probably mobility issues, they're still at the beginning of theirs. And I feel like, man, these people they really need a better choice of living arrangements, and they need to be around people of their same mental state and age group and stage of life, right?
Wow, this was an observation you made when you're younger.
Absolutely, yeah.
And it stayed with you ever since?
Yeah, it stayed with me that long.
Hence the reason why it seems to me that's probably one of the drivers for you to really want to give back. But specifically in that NDIS space where you want to provide accommodation that's befitting to the individual. I knew there was something. I was just very curious to see where it comes from.
Yeah.
Motivation.
So you know, it's I always think the younger you are, and when you see things that they can leave a strong impression because you've got nothing else to compare it to, right? Like
you see it for what it is.
Yeah, you don't kind of put it through a filter. Well, you put it through a filter, but you put it through a less mature filter without as many biases and without
it's more black and white, literally.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the reasons for me seeing that, and I could also see my mum, right? She would have been sort of late 30s, early 40s, so kind of what my age now. And working there, and she'd be like, well, you know, she could see that those kids that she was looking after effectively could have been her kids, right? And I think that also moved her.
It's very much a emotional observation that you're sharing with me. And I can understand why it stuck with you for such a long time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. So, don't mind me for getting it out of you. I was just very curious to see where it's coming from. And specifically in the NDIS space, obviously, perhaps that could be a bit of another career opportunity going forward, or potentially a business idea or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a mentor that works in that space, and you know, so I'm kind of learning bits and pieces from him at the moment and doing a bit of research, understanding what it takes and where you can make the biggest impact. Look, it's always going to be about finding the right accommodation, and from what I can see, it's always easier to start from the ground up. So if there is like a property that you have, for example, you'd probably be better off knocking that down and rebuilding it rather than doing the $500,000 worth of renovations to reinforce the roof, you know, winding the doors and everything else. You're almost better off knocking down and building something that's tailor-made. And I think long term, you know, even if that's an NDIS property for say 20 years, if you then look to get out or sell it and somebody wants to buy it for themselves, that to me, Jeff, I feel like it's not a bad thing, right? Because every room has a bathroom. There's plenty of room in the hallway. So people it may look funny because there's rails and other things, but yeah, they're cosmetics. You can take those off.
You can always exactly. You can always just remove it.
Yeah. So for me, that's, it's not like you're picking up one thing over another. You're just expanding the market that you're catering for.
Because you know what's also interesting is that when we first had a conversation, you're very much also a property investor. You're in Pexa. It's sort of this idea of NDIS and moving forward towards more of a social purpose. Sort of, I can sort of connect the dots already as to how you can move into that space already.
Yeah, I think it's something I'm working on. That's why I say it's I'm always looking for a side hustle and it's a side hustle doesn't have to take up a lot of time. I think as long as you feel like you're making progress, then great, then that's good enough. It depends what you want from it, right? But for me,
it's very wise words, Ronny.
Yeah. So yeah, I think it's for me, it's just about learning the market and understanding what's out there.
Interesting. You remind me of a time when I was in year 6. This was 1996. Getting back to what you're saying about when you're younger, you see things in a very simple lens. And don't laugh at me, by the way, if I tell you this. I remember walking up to my year 6 teacher, his name was Mr. Weston. Just imagine an old gentleman, get brown hair. He was wearing this maroon colored jumper, gray trousers. Yes, that's specific. I was handing over a math quiz, which taught you how to do advanced multiplication. Just think 3,452 times by 263. So it was literally a math sheet which had all these questions. So I handed it in. He marked it straight away, and I don't know where this came from. Like, I actually asked him, "Do you think I can become Prime Minister one day?"
Nice.
And you know what he said to me? He goes, "You know what, Jeff? You sure can."
Yeah, that's awesome.
And what's interesting is that, getting back to your example about your mum going to these venues, when she was about sort of your age, create a bit of an emotional bond in a way. That memory of me standing next to my year 6 teacher when I was 11 years old is like a picture in my head.
Yeah, absolutely. But he was right.
He's right.
Yeah,
he's right.
That's the thing. And I think that's a quote that I've been pondering lately is, you can have anything you want, or anything, but you can't have everything.
Okay. I need to process that one.
Yeah,
you can have anything you want, except everything.
No. You can have anything you want, but you can't have everything. So
you can have everything what you want, but everything.
So what if factually, like, this is where I'm kind of coming at from. So as I'm unpacking it, I'm thinking, okay, so basically it's saying, like, literally, you can have anything you want in life, anything, but you can't have everything. So you've got to focus. Pick one thing or 3.
True.
And then go for that. But don't go, oh, this week I want that, this week I want this, because then you won't have anything.
Yeah, you're constantly chasing your tail.
Yeah.
Have you got that focus yet? It seems to me you have, in a way, or no?
A little bit. Look, I think we all go through stages in life, and
we all do. We're only human, right?
And we're thinking machines, right? And so you start thinking about
that's our problem. That's our problem.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, that's a problem. Yeah.
I'm not sure if I'm there yet, Jeff, but I feel like I'm getting better at it, right?
You're getting better at focusing on what you want. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Because you're right. Because life is transient. What you want one day could easily flip around another day, eh?
Yeah. And it's so true, like, I don't know who said this, but it's like, not everybody wants a Ferrari. Like, you take 1,000 people. I mean, maybe 500 of them will say, yeah, I'd love that. But the other 500 will surprise you, and they'll be like, no, I'm not interested in that. I'd rather have this or that. So, and I think that comes back to the fact that quite often we think, or I feel there's a tendency for people to think of limitations and there's not enough, scarcity. But the reality is there's more than enough, and there's probably too much. And that's another thing that then makes it easy for you to go get what you want when you really focus. But the key is focusing, and I think that's the hard part, right?
Because there's too much out there. We're thinking machines, a lot of distractions.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at, I don't know about you, but if you look at my parents, and my dad's dream was to come to Australia from Denmark. Like he sort of, I think he said he was 16 or 17 or something like that, and he saw a map of Australia and kangaroos and stuff, and he thought, wow, that's where I want to be. And then eventually he got there because of his IT experience, and he got to get to the head of the queue because he was educated in the area that Australia needed and wanted back in the 80s. So he was very focused on that, and he wasn't really focused on anything else. Right? Like he loved his role, but I think once he came here, it was interesting to see that he just continued doing what he loved. Like he loves IT, and I think if he could, he'd still work in that industry now. Given the low unemployment figures, he probably still can.
He can probably get 10x his salary.
True. But for me, I kind of look at that and go, okay, well, they had a focus. But if they'd been all over the place saying, oh no, we want to do this, we want to go to Spain, we want to go to Canada, we want to go to US, they may never have gone anywhere, right? But Dad was so focused on Australia that he said, hey, that's where I want to go.
And even when you guys got here, he then focused on his role in IT, but obviously in Australia.
Yeah.
I like that quote.
So
you can have anything, but not everything.
Yeah.
Well said.
I don't know who said it, but it's something, sometimes you have things that just ruminate in your head. And I think that's another thing. You as human beings, we don't pay enough attention to the rumination. I feel sometimes, men, women, we all have this tendency where we probably endure things, and when you don't listen to the rumination, I think that's when things can feel like they're going wrong, because you don't really, your body know. I feel that your body knows, and the thoughts that you're having is a result of those vibrations kind of coming up and saying, hey, you need to pay attention to this, or you need to think about this.
Is that sort of instinct, intuition?
Intuition, instinct, yeah, absolutely. It might be something saying that, hey, don't walk down that alleyway. That could be one thing. That's on one level. It could be, you should explore that opportunity. Don't just shut it down. I think that's definitely something that everybody.
So you're sort of telling me the subconscious mind already knows what you want, and it's essentially giving you signals to take on.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, we have the, what is it? The reticulating RAS, I think it is.
RAS. Okay. I've never heard of that term before.
It's something like the reticulating activation system. It's something in your brain. So if you think about what kind of car do you drive, Jeff?
A Skoda, Octavia. It's like a backpack on wheels.
I love it.
Love it. It's like a backpack.
Mate, I'll tell you a story about Skoda in a second.
Okay.
I bet you when you started looking for that car, you started, all of a sudden you saw it everywhere.
Agree.
Yeah.
Agree.
That is your RAS. I need to fact check that. I'm not 100% sure. I think
because your mind is focused on it, hence you pay a bit more attention to it.
Yeah.
Agree.
So that's that's one of our evolutionary traits, that it picks out patterns or things that you're focused on, which helps you survive, right? But we use it in the modern sense that it picks out things that we're interested in.
Instagram.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. So I think that when you then have these ruminating thoughts, sometimes they're negative. If they're negative, I think it's not so much about the bad things that could be or as a result of it. It's like that's telling you that there's something that you need to deal with or act on or get away from, right? So maybe like if you go to work every day and you just have these things about, oh man, I just dread going to work. Maybe you need to be looking for a different role. Maybe you need to be looking for a different industry. Maybe you need to not that you necessarily can afford it, but maybe you need to take the time out and just give yourself some space and time to reflect.
Have you read the book The Alchemist before, Ronnie?
Yeah. What's his name? Paul
Coelho or something like that.
Yeah.
What you're saying to me reminds me of a quote. I'm not too sure if it came from The Alchemist, but essentially goes, your mind already knows what it wants. And every day, it just gives you reminders to just pick up on it and go with it.
Yeah, that's true. That's very cool.
And the term was RAS again, is that correct?
Yeah, it is. If you don't mind me, I'll just...
Have a quick look. So you're telling me RAS is essentially these little cues that your body gives you, is that correct?
Well, it's a system that helps you...
be alert or something like that,
or focus in on so it's the reticular activating system, and it's a complex bundle of nerves in the brain that's responsible for regulating wakefulness and sleep-wake transitions, and it also functions as a filter by taking out unnecessary noise that can interfere with the process of messages or slow the processing of messages during sleep. That's the kind of scientific definition, but I think it's Alan Pease, the guy who wrote Body Language. He's got a book, and in that book he talks about the RAS and how that's exactly what it does. As soon as you start having thoughts about buying a Skoda, you'll see the Skoda everywhere, and that helps reconfirm for you that A, it's a popular choice. B, it's a good choice because there are many of them out there, and there wouldn't be many of them out there if it wasn't a good choice. And it just reinforces things that you want to or looking to do.
I suppose in a negative way, it's like you going, you know what, I'm going to buy company X on the share market. I want it so badly that I sometimes might forget the objective side of things. Would that be the negative way of that in a way? Or
yeah, I guess so. I guess it could be negative in that sense, and that's why I think that the flip side is you can't just focus on the rumination. You got to also listen to how the body is with it, right? Like, how does that sit with you? How does it feel? Is it a gut instinct, or is it more like sort of a heart instinct, or like throat anxiety instinct? I think that there's lots of little things that you combine in to get that holistic view on it.
Wow, that's a very fascinating. So with yourself, Ronnie, are you listening to your ruminations?
I try to, Jeff.
What's stopping you?
Well, look, sometimes you get preoccupied, or technology is very good at grabbing your attention as well. And once your attention's grabbed, it's you don't always focus on the things that you should be.
Are you looking to maybe control yourself when it comes to this technology thing?
Oh, look, it's not a problem for me, but it's I think it's just part of the culture. Like, you look like, how many times you go out and you see people having coffee, but they're looking at their phones rather than the person across from them.
So when we do have that lunch and coffee, our phones are right in our back pockets, Ronnie.
That's right.
Interesting.
But it's true, right? Like, how many
You're right,
times...
it is. It's crazy.
I saw there's a photographer, I can't remember who it was, but you can Google it later. But he took these photos, and he just took normal everyday photos of people sitting, but But then what he did was he removed the phone or the screen from their hand, and all you're seeing are these people just looking at their hand, and they're really amazing photos, because you go like, yeah, that doesn't make sense. Like, people just not paying attention to what's going on around them.
Interesting, and you're right. So how can one be closer to the ruminations? Because I've heard of this topic before. Like what I said, the alchemist, your body already knows what you want. It's just basically giving you clues every single day to go for it.
I think so two things. I think to firstly take a step back. I think ruminations for me, like if you think about, what's a thought that appears to you again and again, Jeff? Like, do you have a thought that comes back to you? Like, I'll give you an example. Like for me, my entire life, I always thought about martial arts and enjoying doing that sport, and I love it. Like, I think it's an amazing thing to be able to do. And I keep thinking, I should go back to it. Right? To me, that's actually my body saying, hey, you should be involved in this. You should be doing this because it's healthy for you, and it's giving you something that is rewarding to you inside and mentally. And when I do practice, so I've done it on and off for over probably, I'd say 30 years.
So note to self, don't mess with you.
No, I'm not saying that I'm amazing at it or anything, Jeff, but like just in a 30-year period, I've done it on and off. Yeah, there'll be years where I don't do it, and then I'll do it for a couple of years, and then I won't do it again for 8 years. But I really do enjoy it. It's something I get a lot out of. And I know that when I'm doing it, I just feel so much more focused, so much more relaxed, and just better about myself.
In the zone.
Yeah. I'm sure you have thoughts like that. Like, do you have like an example of something that just constantly recurs to you or occurs to you?
No.
Okay.
Because I'm at a state now where I feel amazing. And the reason why is that, you know how people talk to you about, you got to live each day, you got to take it day by day. And when I was younger, or maybe a few years ago, I was always looking forward. What am I going to do next? What's going to happen then? How do I make that money? How do I free X that? How do I get property number X? Where I'm going to buy that. So I'm thankful now. I'll answer your question in a way, and I'll tell you why. I'm thankful in a way now that now I only think about what's in front of me, if that makes sense. And
sure.
That's the thought that comes to me. So when you ask...
That's your rumination, right?
Yeah, like I'm talking to you, you're my priority, I'm looking at you. That's the thought. And I feel very calm now. Even if there's a big problem, I know it's tomorrow's problem in a way.
Yeah. Well, the rumination doesn't necessarily mean anxiety either, right? Like some people think, it's what I'm anxious about. Well, no, not necessarily. I think Mel Robbins talks to this point very, very beautifully. She goes, anxiety is, you need to flip that and say, it's something I'm excited about. Right now I'm excited. Because anxiety and excitement is the same feeling, same body chemistry, same reactions within your body.
Wow.
I didn't know that.
I didn't know that too. There you go, I'm learning.
So, that kind of flips it. So when people feel anxiety, if they can have the foresight or the insight to say, hey, I'm actually excited about this, that can change your perception. Because once you start telling yourself that you're excited versus anxious, it's a different mindset. It's a different thought process, and it's liberating.
You're not fighting it. You're accepting it.
Yeah, you're embracing it, right? So rumination for me is one way to say, okay, well, why am I thinking about this? This is something I'm thinking about often. Why am I thinking about it often? What is it that's attracting me to think about it? So for you, it's obviously being in the present. And so but then you can kind of go deeper and start to think about, well, why am I thinking about it like that? What is it that's driving me to want to be in the present? Have you spent a lot of time in the future, or have you spent a lot of time in the past?
Wow, you really got me thinking again. I think about the present constantly because peace of mind is so important to me.
Yeah. And that's a good point, right? Like, I think anytime we look forward or we look backward, that creates either, I think, anxiety or depression.
It does.
Yeah. Now, I'm a big believer in being comfortable, like being comfortable with being uncomfortable. I think that's really important. I think
we all need to.
Yeah. You can't get through life without being uncomfortable. It's just, and the minute you think you can, that's when you're going to get hit, right? Like, you're going to get
regardless if it's raining, hailing, sunshine, cold, wet. It is what it is.
Yeah, like influence the things you can, and don't worry about the things that you can't.
Wow, this conversation has taken on a whole new different base. I knew this was in you, Ronnie. You scare me sometimes in terms of its depth. Did you know we've been speaking for over an hour now, by the way?
No, it doesn't feel like it, does it? I mean, it may, I'm sure the people listening, they may be going, wow, how long has this been running? A couple of hours now?
Yeah, that's essentially what I want, right? This is amazing. Just getting back to the rumination thing about, there's a lot of distraction, it's sort of maybe dragging you away from listening. Actually, here's an example. Last year, my rumination was that I was very unhappy. I felt that I shared this to you before. I was turning into someone that I wasn't. And that was always gnawing on the back of my head. Then one day, obviously it sounds simple, right? One day I had enough. I said, you know what? Shut up. I'm going to listen to you now. I'm going to do something about it. And I did.
Yeah. And I think that's when you kind of, sometimes it takes time, Jeff. Like, it takes time to deal with that beast, right? A lot of times people don't realize they're ruminating stuff. Like, it may be easy as an external party to see, hey, Jeff, we're having this conversation again. Like, we've talked about this now 3 or 4 times. What's actually happening in this situation for you? And I think that's another way that you can see rumination, right? Repetitive patterns of communication or conversations that people have. It's like they talk about the same thing. It's like, okay, I'm not talking about.
You need a good friend for that. Yeah.
I mean, absolutely. But even with people you only talk to a little bit, Jeff, you watch, like, if there's people, like, even workmates, right? Like, workmates, you'll have conversations, and I'm just talking about, oh, it's great weather, shame about the weather, or it's raining, whatever. Like, not that. People have a tendency to repeat themselves, right, because of what's going on, and
that's the rumination.
Yeah, that's my belief, anyway.
Fascinating. I think we're to come back for podcast 2, because I've got a ton of other questions I'm going to ask you, because you've opened up this whole different portal here. I'm conscious of your time, Ronnie. Let's park everything, right? Let's park rumination. Let's park Pexa. Let's park your 20 years in financial markets, foreign exchange. I know very much now of what motivates you, why you want to be where you want to be. Can you paint me a picture, Ronnie, in 30 years' time? Paint me a picture. Where are you? Is it a feeling? If it's a feeling, paint me a feeling. Is it somewhere tangible? Tell me exactly where you are.
Yeah, that's a great question, Jeff. I like that. So for me, it's a feeling of it's both, right? Like, it's a feeling of contentment, being content.
What color is that? What color is it?
For me, it's probably like a bright orange or bright yellow.
I like it. I like it.
Maybe a little bit of green around the edges there.
I can see it.
And you know, it's just kind of getting up, living every day I can, spending time with family. You know, I haven't been lucky enough to have any children yet, but I do hope to have children. I think that'd be amazing. And yeah, so just being in the moment with my partner, which I do try to be, but you know, again, that's why I'm saying to you, like, there's much growth to be had on that journey between now and the 30 years.
You're with your partner, right? But are you somewhere?
Yeah.
Where are you?
So I'd still be in Australia, but the way I kind of look at it, we'd be between countries. So we'd be, you know, a little bit of time here, a little bit of time overseas, in Denmark maybe.
Is it sunny?
Maybe, yes, sunny, and then we don't mind having the seasons, all 4 seasons, experiencing the seasons, you know, snow, cold, hot, wet, dry.
So that picture of contentment, orange, yellow, bit of green around it, it seems to me that's a painting hanged up somewhere.
Yeah, it could be.
You're with your wife.
Yeah.
You're enjoying the 4 seasons. You split between Australia and Denmark. You know, thankfully, you know, you said there's kids maybe potentially running around you. It's a sunny day, but it could be snowing. But to me, what's more important? But the picture of, is it contentment, or is it the tangible of being with your family and friends?
Yeah, I think that's a tough question, Jeff, because
I ask myself sometimes that too.
Yeah, because I feel like I feel family brings contentment, but contentment is also good for family, right? So I think it's a balance between the two. I don't think you can pick, and I don't think you will have to either. I think you can have both.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. I'm a big believer in having both. Now, but it comes back to saying, you know, again, it's the saying I was saying, it's you can have anything you want, but you can't have everything.
Focus.
Right? Yeah.
Ronnie, thank you very much for your time. I was going to ask you one more question about any final thoughts, but I think that quote summarizes it perfectly.
Thanks, Jeff. It's been a pleasure.